right. We're going to talk more in detail about Razor Pages. The first assignment, as I mentioned, you were not required to use Razor Pages. You were welcome to use them if you wished, but you weren't required. From this point on, everything that you'll do in this class will be via Razor Pages. So I wanted to talk about creating them, make sure everyone was on the same page, and go from there. I have an example already made. I'm going to create a brand new example. Again, this should be review from last time. Then we'll pull down from Canvas an example that I have that's already posted. So first of all, get the latest version of Visual Studio. So I will go and open Visual Studio 2022, the latest main version. If you have an earlier, if you have you missed an update, it's probably not the end of the world, but go for Visual Studio 2022. And I'm going to go and add a project, new project, and you get this window that is very scary. The good news is that once you make a choice, that I think becomes the top choice in your list. So you only have to get this right once, and I think every time after that you just pick the one on the top. I think that's how it works anyhow. But we want ASP.NET Core web pages. Project template for creating an ASP.NET Core application with example Razor pages. Let's stop for a minute and let's review what ASP.NET Core is. Because there have been several flavors of ASP over the years. And one of the more recent ones is ASP.NET Core. Cross-platform, high-performance, open-source framework for building cloud-enabled, internet-connected. Here's a list of why choose. If I start for building web UI and API, architected for testing, Razor make code page folk scenarios more easy, and so on. So it's an advance. It's a new way of doing ASP.NET than the previous way, which we taught maybe 2 or 3 years ago, which was ASP.NET Web Forms. Anyhow, I'm going to pick ASP.NET Core App. I pick Next. You give it a name and decide where to put it. This is very important. You need to give me the entire folder. You can't just zip up the solution file, for example, or whatever. I always have a few students that do that, but you need to zip up the complete folder. So I'm going to call this Tuesday because it's Tuesday. And it wants to put it in the source repository. I'm going to simplify things and put it on the desktop just so it's easily visible. Solution and project in the same folder. I usually check yes for that because, again, it's just easier moving things around. Like if I wanted to upload this to Canvas, I would only need to worry about zipping up that one folder because everything, the solution, the project, and all that are in there. A solution can actually have many projects in it, although pretty much all the examples that we're going to go over in this class only has one project in our solutions. You have the choice of the versions of the framework. If you're creating something new, you might as well start with the newest one. So choose ASP.NET 6.0. If you were creating something for an existing organization that maybe was on an earlier version of the framework, then you might pick an earlier version of the framework. The only time I would say not take the new version is sometimes if a version is in beta. and you're not really sure if that version has been tested out adequately. Authentication type, that is how you want people to log on to your system, to your application. And I'm going to pick none. And I click create. We did this last time, and so this should be review for you. All right. Here's our solution over on the right side. The two key folders for us right now are Pages and www.root. Pages are where we're going to create our Razor pages. www.root is our web server, our development web server's root directory. And I had a student with a question about this, and it was a really good question. I can understand why there was some confusion. Anything other than Razor pages, I can't think of any exceptions, but if it's not a Razor page, it is going to be probably in the www.root folder. Notice we have in there our CSS pages, CSS JavaScript, and some libraries, such as Bootstrap, which we'll talk about in a bit, jQuery, which is sort of a library built on top of JavaScript. So these are all things that our site uses, and therefore they are in www.root. Our Razor pages get translated into HTML by the server, but it looks for them in the Pages folder, all right, or subfolders thereof. When we create a Razor page, we create a mapping that says that this URL maps to this Razor page, and that way it knows to call up the particular Razor page. Let's just for laughs go into www.root and create an HTML file just to demonstrate. I'm going to add new item. Plain old HTML file. And I'm going to call it terms and conditions. Actually, I'm not going to call it that. That would probably be best done in a Razor page. I'm just going to call this test HTML page. I'll just call it test. Because truth be told, for the most part, if you're going to create an application using Razor pages, you'll use Razor pages for everything, even if it doesn't require a Razor page. For example, if there's no database interactivity or no server-side scripting, even if it would be just a plain old static HTML page, you'd probably create it as a Razor page anyhow, just for consistency. But I want to show you, if you were going to do that, how it would work. Likewise, if we add an image, let's look for a smiley face image, because we're happy today, aren't we? Didn't seem too enthusiastic there. Save image as. And it's called smileyface1.jpg. So where would I put this? And I could do this either through Visual Studio or I can do it through the operating system. I would put it in my www root folder. And I don't have one, but I probably would create an image folder just to be organized. So I'll create a new folder called images. And I'll put smiley face 1 inside of it. Smiley face 1 is still downloading. Oh. Okay. That should put it in there. Further. So I'm going to go into my HTML file then. Or if you created your HTML file outside of Visual Studio, you would move it into www root. I'm going to go in here and edit this. And I'm just going to put a tag for images, my image. Now, nice thing is it gives you a little pop-up where we can pick smiley face. And what that means is from the web server root, you go down to the folder images, and you want the file called smileyface.jpg. Alt equals smiley face. All right, so there we go. If we wanted to view this, we could run. It's going to bring up our default pages. And I could type in here test.html. And there we go. We have our web page. Now I'm going to want it on the navigation for this site. I'm going to want it on this navigation up here. Right? Now that is a razor page. That's our index. So I'm going to go to the index page. And I'm not going to put it there. Why not? Because our index page is not the entire page. It's only the part distinct from the rest of the pages. Stuff that is shared, such as navigation, heading, and so forth, belong in the shared pages and in the layout file. So if I want to create a link for it, I could just copy one of these guys. And ASP page slash means from the root, home.html, or not home, test.html. Now when I run this, we don't get anything. sensitive, is it? I'd be surprised at that. You have to do tilde. Tilde slash says from the root directory, pull up that. Okay, now this is bugging me. Oh, this isn't an ASP page. So I couldn't use those ASP page. All right, now let's get back into Razor pages. Razor pages, again, you're given a layout page, which is sort of the ancestor or parent, is going to be the ancestor or parent for pretty much all the pages that you're going to create. That is good because that gives you a common layout. Remember in CISS243, when you made web pages, you would create one page and then clone it multiple times. The problem with that approach is that if you needed to change the template and you had already cloned and customized each individual page, you would have to go and change each of the clones after you had copied it over. Whereas this, things that are common to all pages, whether it be header, footer, whatever, are in the layout file. And the layout file has the CSS that we're using, has the body with our navigation. This render body is where we put in the specifics of the web page that we're displaying. So for example, in index, it's welcome and this link. So that's where it pops in the body of the specific web page. All the rest of the stuff is stuff that's going to be on every one of our pages. So essentially you design a template, all right? And you can make changes to that template and that will affect every page. You then, through this render tag, drop in the stuff that's specific to a page. So this, when you're viewing index, will drop in the index CSS_HTML code. If you're viewing privacy, it would drop in privacy, and so on. Home and privacy. Now, if I want to create a new page, what I do is right mouse on this, and I say I want to add. I can pick Razor page, or I can pick new item. Let's pick new item. And don't do as I do. I did not give it a name. Therefore, it's called index 1. Instead, when you create it, give it a name down here. And then again, we can fill in the stuff, the HTML that we want to put in. That's going to get plopped in to the layout, the template at that render body point. So we'll go in here and we'll just put like maybe a heading that says, this is my new Razor page. Problem is, we forgot to put that in. We can type in the URL, but normally you would want that in the navigation. So since that's common to all the pages, we would do that on the template or the layout file. Takes us there. And that navigation will be on all the pages. Well, except for that one, because that's not a Razor page. All right. This is pretty much what we did last time. Any questions about it? What we want to do is we want to build on this. And so I'm going to download from Canvas my new project, or my other example project. Again, when it was time to turn that in, you would right mouse on that, send to compressed zip folder, upload the entire contents of the zip folder. Let me go to class. Get the week 2 module, and I'll download Razor Page example 1. We'll save that on the desktop. It put it in the images folder because that's the last thing I did. Gonna extract the stuff from this. Open it up again. Once you've extracted it, go and find either the solution or the project file, typically the solution. Open it up. And away we go. Let's run this and see the additional pages I created. So it's a couple things. First of all, I changed the color of stuff from the default. Remember, you're creating your website here. It's not an excuse to say that, well, Visual Studio generated the code that way. It's not an excuse. You make whatever changes you need to the style, to the layout, whatever, to get this to work the way that you want your web page to work. So by default, yeah, the default Razor page gives you vertical navigation like this. If you want it negative navigation or not horizontal, but vertical navigation, just go into the layout and make it be vertical navigation. All right. If you want it to look differently, if you don't want a white background, you can do that. Here I have a static Razor page that just displays some information about CISS243. But let's look how the color got changed here. Since it's a change to everything on the site, it's going to be a change made to the layout file. Solve these down. The Solution Explorer. Let's look at our layout file. Notice I added a style sheet. And looking at this, where is the style sheet? The style sheet will be in the web server's root. All right. So if we look at that, what I notice in the web server's root, because there's no prefix saying the folder it's in. So if we were to look at this, sure enough, we go to the www root, there you see our style sheet. Now, you can make the point that that should be in the CSS folder, and that's true. I just wanted to illustrate how things are going to be positioned, or how things could be positioned within your application. So if you notice here, I added another style sheet. You could just have well gone into this style sheet and make the change that I made. All right. I did want to demonstrate something though, that you're able to apply multiple style sheets to a given page. And the way that it works is that the later style sheet overrules stuff in the previous style sheet. So in this case, if I were to open up that style sheet file, rid of that, that was a mistake. I have body background yellow. So there was something in the preceding style sheets that made the body white, or maybe it wasn't defined as white. However, I went and changed it to be yellow. So what's in this style sheet overrules what's in the other style sheets. Now again, I just could have put it in here, but I wanted to demonstrate that it is possible to overrule stuff simply by putting it in a later in the list style sheet. ASP.NET Razor pages are generated using Bootstrap. Now, is anyone familiar with Bootstrap? Let's see what Bootstrap is. Definition. Bootstrap is essentially a set of CSS files that style common elements on a web page to guarantee consistency. It states that it is a CSS, HTML, and JavaScript library. And you'll notice that there's a JavaScript and a CSS file. If you notice in our layout, we include those. We at least include the CSS up here, and we include the JavaScript down here at the bottom of the page. Putting your JavaScript at the bottom of the page is a neat little trick that guarantees that your page is completely loaded before you try to execute any JavaScript. What you can do with Bootstrap is you can pick an element of the page and you can say how you want it styled. So this example let's look at the Jumbotron. The Jumbotron is the main sort of header on the page. And what they do is they give the main header these classes. Let's look what classes our header has. Well, has a class, the navigation has a class navbar, navbar expand small, navbar, all of those are classes within Bootstrap, and you can override the style if you want. So let's go and override the style of nav item. I'll do this in my style sheet. It's a class, so it starts with a period. And let's say font size. To EM. We're going to make those links big. Notice our links are now big. You can override the things that exist in Bootstrap. But in Bootstrap, you assign to the different elements of the page some standard classes that tell you what it represents. Like this was a menu item, so nav item, item in the navigation. Key things I want you to remember about this is because the CSS file was not a Razor page, it goes in www root. And you can put it wherever you want to. I put it in the root of that folder. You could put it in a subfolder. The other thing I want you to realize is that these style sheets overrule each other. So in other words, my style CSS overrules the Bootstrap one. Watch what happens if I rearrange this. mistake, it's still big. Perhaps there was no style in the default for nav item. Maybe the style was put on one of these other classes. One thing that helps you in figuring out why something is styled that way. Let's leave this in here. Is if you're viewing the page, you go under More Tools, Developer Tools, and you go under Elements and you put your mouse over these certain things. It actually shows you down here the style rules that take place. So I clicked on that, it shows me where it gets all its style from. One thing that's cool that Bootstrap provides is it provides responsiveness. If you notice when we were viewing that page before, if we make the page too small, this reverts to a hamburger menu. It's big, then the whole menu is displayed. All right, there's one more piece of Razor Pages that we haven't seen yet, and that is having code associated with the Razor page. And that's what this example is. So we'll introduce this example and we might finish. If not, we'll finish next time. Within our application, we have a temperature conversion where you type in a temperature in centigrade. Click go. And it gives you the answer in Fahrenheit. So 100 centigrade is 212 Fahrenheit. 0 centigrade or Celsius is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this is not necessarily the information you need a server for. This could be put in client-side scripting. But because we're talking about Razor Pages and servers, we're going to go over this example. Let's look at the Razor page for that. Temperature. We have our CSS_HTML, and then we have our code by. Our code behind. Now, we've said the model for this web page is Razor page 1, example 1, pages, temperature model. So the model for this page is this C# file. So when we refer to @model temp C, we're referring to the variable in this file that is called temp C. And we define that as an attribute that's a double, getters and setters, so that is an attribute of this class. Notice what we also have. We also have an onGet method and an onPost method. You might remember those things from CISS243 when we covered forms. There was a post and there was a get as the method. When this page initially loads, the form was not posted. Therefore, the onGet executes. And with the onGet, notice there's nothing in nothing for the results for this. The calculation wasn't performed. However, when we type in a value, and click go, on post gets called, and that does the calculation and displays the results. So look at this code behind. On get doesn't do anything, it just blanks out the results. So therefore, when temp C razor page, or when the razor page gets to be displayed, the results, which is displaying here, are blank. I use a value of temp C. Well, temp C initially, when that class is created, is 0, so it shows a 0 in the text box. After I run this and click on post, then this code gets called. We pull from the query string, or not the query string, from the forms collection, the value temp C. Temp C corresponding to the name of that input. We calculate temperature Fahrenheit by doing this calculation. 9 times the temperature in centigrade divided by 5 plus 32. That's the formula. And then we set the result string as being the value of the temperature plus the phrase degrees Fahrenheit. And then after a post, when this gets displayed, value that we put in there gets displayed over here. What if we wanted to put that results in an H1? Well, we just put an H1 around the HTML. Appears as a top level heading. We did a view source. It's not liking that. Let me run this through debugger. I would hope if you've done Visual Studio before, you've done debugger. What debugger allows you to do is put breakpoints in your code where you get to see and follow the execution of the code. So I'm going to run and debug this, and I put a breakpoint in both on get and on post. So when I run this, when the page loads for the first time, when I click this, it hits on get, which blanks out the results. And I can continue. Then when I put in a value and hit go, on post gets called, and we go in and we can step through we can see temp C has a value of 11, so it pulled it correctly from the form. We continue to do this, we can see the value of temp F get calculated. This is useful if your code doesn't produce the results that you think it would. If you're ever having problems with code, I will invariably ask you, have you run it through the debugger and what did the debugger show? All right. That's all I had for today. Let me know if you have any questions. If you want to come to lab, you're welcome to up in BU 210. If not, we will see you next week. Take care.